Hey friends, I'd like to talk today about how we can make the Sabbath a delight. In Isaiah 58, God says that we will call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him. So I think honoring the Lord means we need to think the Sabbath is awesome. And if we don't think the Sabbath is awesome, we're probably not doing the Sabbath well. So I'm going to give you some tips on how I have come to love the Sabbath, and hopefully it's a blessing to you. So the Lord gives us two different places where he gives the Ten Commandments in the Bible. The first is in Exodus 20, and the second is in Deuteronomy chapter 5. The Ten Commandments are almost the same in those two chapters, except for the fourth commandment. It's very different in each of those two chapters. So in Exodus 20, God talks about the reason why we should keep the Sabbath is because he's the creator of heaven and earth. And so obviously there's something we can learn from the creation story as to why he's giving that as a reason to keep the Sabbath. Now in Deuteronomy, he doesn't mention creation at all. He only mentions that he delivered us from Egypt, and he got us out of Egypt by a strong hand and a mighty arm. And therefore he commanded us to keep the Sabbath day. So there's something about being delivered from bondage and being delivered from Egypt that is key to Sabbath keeping. And then another time that the Lord talks about the Sabbath is the first time he kept the Sabbath with Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 2. Now in Genesis chapter 2, it says that God ended his work, he rested, and then he got a blessing, and he sanctified the Sabbath. So four things that happened in that first Sabbath. So some takeaways from those three areas that I encourage you to study on your own. Number one, in the creation story, God programmed into our life things that routinely happen, guaranteed, all the time, every time. Right? Like the sun will always rise. You will always have a sunset. You're always going to have winter. You're always going to have summer. Gravity works every single day, not just on Tuesdays. And so those routines that God programmed, I think, tell us, hey man, you need to have a life of routine. And I think this is where the word religion comes from, because religion is about consistent, repeated actions in our walk with Jesus. And modern times now, everyone wants to be spiritual and they don't want to have routines. Like, oh, today I feel like I got the Spirit in me, and tomorrow maybe I don't. That's not how it's supposed to be. Like every day, like the sun rises and the sun sets, we should have worship. We should have, at the evening, Jesus in creation story, he always looked at everything he did that day and he said, it was been a good day. And then on the day he created man and Eve, he said, it's been a very good day. So every day the Lord had this time of gratitude and appreciation for what he did. And we can do that every morning and every evening as we have. But then when the Sabbath comes, I think we need to create a routine or a rhythm around the Sabbath in our house. And one way you can do that, if the sixth day is a very good day in the creation story, what can you make about the end of the sixth day that is very good? So we try to have a special meal. And special meals usually mean good food. Okay? This is not the time to bring out Brussels sprouts and your spinach. Like have a super fun meal that everyone's looking forward to on Friday nights. And only do it on Friday nights. That meal can happen no other time except on Friday nights. And I would encourage you to have the same one. It's just something you can look forward to. Make your favorite food on Friday nights and eat it as a family. And it can be something that everyone can celebrate and be excited about. Another thing that you can do on Friday nights is recount what the Lord has done good for you that week, which I think is why Deuteronomy focuses on the Egyptian deliverance and being delivered from bondage and remembering. It literally says, remember how the Lord delivered you from Egypt. So what do we need to remember every Friday night as we enter the Sabbath that the Lord has done in our lives, and I think specifically in that week? Because if we don't look for what the Lord has done for us, we're not going to see it. We need to be looking and trying to give credit to the Lord. That's how we can call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him. So we need to honor the Lord. When you honor somebody, you remember all the great things that they've done. You know, like, hey, I'm giving you the Heisman Trophy because you did so many things in football. Well, you're honoring that person by remembering what they did. We, the same in Sabbath keeping, need to remember and acknowledge what Jesus has done for us. And by doing that, it's going to increase our love for him and going to bring joy, because we're going to see how the Lord has been merciful to us, and while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And so that, I think, is very important to add to your Friday night routine. Like, recount, have everyone around your family say what Jesus has done for them that week, what fun things have happened, what blessings have occurred, what things you're thankful for. Those are all ways you can have that same conversation. So the third thing that we need to do, getting into the Sabbath, is what Jesus did in Genesis chapter 2. In Genesis chapter 2, it says that God ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made, and God blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it. So there's 4 things there. So the first thing is you have to end your work. Now, if you're like me, you're never finished with your work. You always have more things you got to do. You didn't finish all your chores. Not every single plate is cleaned. You forgot to vacuum the mudroom. There's always going to be something that's going to happen, right? You still end it. Like, maybe Jesus could have done more things on day 7, right? But he chose not to. He said, I'm done with creation. It's very good up to this point. And it was for him because he's God. But for us, in Hebrews, it says that Jesus finishes our work. And that's why we need to end our work. And that's not only physical work, but it's spiritual work. But I think the ending of our physical work is a mental reminder that, hey man, I'm stopping cleaning my mudroom and I'm stopping doing my dishes because I'm also stopping trying to work my way into heaven. Jesus is going to finish the work that he did in us. He's going to perform it until the day he comes. And the Sabbath is a weekly reminder of that. But in order to get the blessing that happened in Genesis chapter 2, we first have to end our work. Then we have to rest in Jesus, which is trusting in him that he's going to make it okay. And it's all right. The life isn't perfect. But then we get the blessing. And every single week, the Lord has a blessing for us. That's why when we get to heaven, we're still going to keep the Sabbath. Because the Lord wants to give us a blessing every single week, just like he wants the sun to rise every single day. And he wants winter to come every single year. These things the Lord has programmed into our lifestyle. The Sabbath, he has a blessing programmed into it every single week if we come and get it. But if we don't come and get it, if we don't take the time to recognize his leading in our life, then we're going to miss it. And the blessing will pass us by. So I encourage you to think about the Sabbath as a delightful day. It is a delight. The Lord gave it to us as the crowning act of creation, if you will. And we can be blessed. I have been blessed, and I encourage you to look for the blessing this week, and I'm sure you will find it. Have a great week.